Hello and welcome to Security Scan. I am Vishal Dahiya and today we will be discussing the Shekatkar Committee report and the issue of defence reforms. The committee of 11 experts led by Lieutenant General Retired D.B. Shekatkar was appointed by the Ministry of Defence last year to recommend measures to enhance combat compatibility and rebalance defence expenditure of the armed forces aimed at increasing the tooth-to-tail ratio. It has been 6 months since the committee has submitted its 561-page long report to the government suggesting several ways to trim, redeploy and integrate manpower under the Ministry of Defence. Some of the prominent recommendations of the committee include raising the defence budget to 2.5 to 3% of the GDP, roll-on of the unused funds in the budget, increased financial powers for the 3 service chiefs, appointment of a 4-star chief of defence staff as chief military advisor to the government, and reorganizing the role of certain organizations like DRDO, DGQA, Ordnance Factory Board, and restructuring of the NCC. The committee has said that if implemented in entirety, its recommendations will save at least 25,000 crore rupees in the next 5 years. So how effective these recommendations are and how easy or difficult it will be for the government to implement them. For a detailed discussion on all these topics, we have with us today in the studio a distinguished panel of guests. Let me introduce you to them, starting with one of the members of the committee, Lieutenant General Retired Vinod Bhatia. Sir, welcome to the show. Then I also have with me Retired Admiral Shekhar Sinha, a defence expert. And we also have a distinguished fellow of the IDSA, Mr. Amit Cowshish. So, welcome to the show, all of you. Let me begin with Mr. Bhatia, you, General Bhatia. You're the member of the committee. And it's a huge report. It's like 561 pages, 120 recommendations. There are several contours if you look at the entire report, and which can be majorly, categorized into 3-4 aspects. One is it recommends the shedding of flab, reducing the wasteful expenditure, and then modernization of combat in one way or the other. First and foremost, and the most important aspect of, when we talk about the modernization or shedding the flab, the basic and the major aspect is the finance. And there are several important recommendations which your committee has given in terms of finance. One is increasing the budget from up to 2.5 to 3% of the GDP, giving financial powers, increased financial powers to 3 service chiefs. How do you believe these recommendations will work if accepted or implemented rather?
See, what are the aim behind the committee? Prime Minister Modi, while addressing the Combined Commanders Conference in December 2015 on INS Vikramaditya, he challenged the common beliefs of the senior commanders. And he gave them 6 areas of reform. Mr. Modi's perform, reform and transform. So among the 6 areas of reform were defense reforms was 1, defense procurement was 2, rationalization of manpower was 3. We also realized in the committee that while we may like to ask for 2.5 to 3%, which is optimal, we are not likely to get it because of competing priorities of the nation. There is a national aim of, to transform India to a secure, modern and prosperous nation. So looking at that, the committee wanted to, let me just put it bluntly, we are the 4th largest armed force of the world. Okay. 2nd largest army of the world. 4th largest air force of the world. We are performing, there's no doubt about it, we are effective, and let me assure you, assure the nation and you that we are performing very well. However, we have some suboptimal organizations which need to be optimized. So the aim was to optimize organizations and meet future challenges. Okay. So we looked at the system and the structures, we looked at the policy, procedures and the processes. We also looked at integrating the various, civil resources which are available. So it was not that it was just looking at the army alone or the navy alone or the air force alone. We looked at integration, we looked at synergy, we looked at jointness. It's an overall, that's how it went to about 550 plus pages. Okay. And the total recommendations are about 218 of them. Okay. And out of which 84 pertain to the army. And there are certain macro issues where there are 29 organizations which are non-uniformed or civil organizations. And we lack strategic autonomy. See, we haven't, the armed forces don't have the support which they should have had.
Okay, we'll go to the strategic autonomy and the support part a little later. Let me bring in Admiral Sinha here. Admiral Sinha, you must have had a look at some of the recommendations, some of the news reports which talk about recommendations. Let me bring the same question to you. One is that this is not the first time that a committee like this has been formed. How different are the recommendations from the previous committees, be it Naresh Chandra committee or several other committees which have been set up by the forces themselves, to the most important part, that is the finances, the budget? Is that something which is visible right now?
You know, this committee had a very specific role or objective.
A mandate.
The objective was, a mandate was that the wasteful expenditure needs to be cut down. And therefore, I think that not very often that we have looked at what all can we shed. So this is the first committee which has actually recommended that within the army, within the navy, within the air force, within the MOD, what all can be shedded off to
Or
reduce
restructured.
expenditure. Or could be restructured. I mean, they said that MES is too mammoth, is too big. ASC must close down, you know, the farms, military farms, and maybe butcheries, you know, those kind of places. And it has also said that, you know, the Ordnance Factory Board, the DPSUs, they all need to be restructured on a sort of corporation kind of corporatize the whole structure. So these are some very good recommendations, and we can talk about it even later. I was in the Joint Service Headquarters, the Integrated Defence Staff Headquarters, for more than 3 years. So, you know, when it comes to jointness, I could address some more of this.
Oh, okay, we'll come to the jointness part of it a little later. Let me bring in Mr. Amit Cowshish. As General Bhatia pointed out and Admiral Sinha also pointed out, this report talks about certain measures which were not touched upon so far, which were like, you know, everybody believed that this should be done, but then they were not in the form of a recommendation, they were not in the form of an action plan. So is this a sort of a path-breaking sort of, you know, report which, if at all acted upon, might bring those required changes in our armed forces?
Well, let me begin by saying that the report is not in the public domain, so it's very difficult to comment on the basis of the reasoning given in the report. But whatever has been appearing in the media, a lot of recommendations, for example, raising the defense budget to 3% or creating a you know, non-lapsable modernization fund. These recommendations have been there for a long time, and even the standing committee reports touch upon these recommendations. But I'm not, the recommendations are unexceptionable. The question is, how do you actually implement them? Take, for example, the question of raising the defense budget to 3% or even 2.5%. First of all, it depends on how you define defense budget. If you include defense pensions, then the defense budget is already, you know, it's more than 2%, so it will not be difficult to raise it 2.5%. But if the idea is that defense budget should not be considered to be a part of the defense budget, then raising the level of the defense budget from, say, present, I think it's around 1.6% to 2.5%, that's going to be a challenge.
Okay.
And raising it to 3% will be still a difficult challenge to meet. So there are challenges. I don't know if the committee has given a real roadmap, because a lot of these things, wasteful expenditure, for example, there was a committee in 2008 which went into it and gave a lot of recommendations. So as I said, the challenge lies in implementing them.
Okay, there are two more parts to the finance angle of this entire thing. You're saying that it will not be difficult, but it's the way you look at the defense budget. There are two aspects to it as per the committee. One, the committee is also recommending that the budget should be made a roll-on budget. You know, if something which is not unspent, it should not be surrendered back to the consolidated fund. It can be utilized in the next financial year. And the second is increased financial powers for the three service chiefs to ensure that smaller acquisitions don't have to also go through the elaborate process which is followed for all the acquisitions in the armed forces. So do you believe that this can also be a little bit more helpful?
Taking your second question first, the delegation of financial powers started happening sometime around 1997. In 2002, there was large-scale delegation of powers. In 2005, again, if I remember correctly, then So it's not as if, this has not been done in the past, and it has been done even for the capital acquisition. I entirely agree. But my only comment there will be that the way the powers are delegated, we have to bring about a paradigm shift in that. The way the powers are delegated at present, these are all layered. Somebody in the service headquarters has higher powers and somebody lower down has lower powers. In my opinion, the powers have to be delegated in full to the level where the responsibility is cast upon the person to deliver.
Okay.
So there is no question of saying that you can spend only up to this and thereafter you have to come to the service headquarters and so on. So that change is required, but certainly delegation of financial power is important. Insofar as the modernization fund is concerned, I don't know if we have the time, but I think this issue has been debated, discussed, analyzed, examined in the last 10 years repeatedly.
Quite a number of times. Even we have done so in this show.
Repeatedly. And there are issues there. I don't know. I can't really comment whether the committee has gone into, all those issues which were raised before the standing committee and which are a part of the report.
Okay.
But just 1 second, I believe, and it's there in the standing committee report, this recommendation or this proposal has again been sent by MOD to the Ministry of Finance in the month of February, if I remember correctly. So let's see what comes out of it.
Okay, let me pose this to the member of the committee. We have one of the members, General Bhatia. Has your committee looked at this aspect in its entirety, as Mr. Cowshish is pointing out, in terms of the other recommendations which have come in from the parliamentary standing committees or the GOMs which earlier looked at this particular aspect, and several other suggestions which have come so far?
Yeah, definitely. We've been through all the earlier reports, whether it was the GOM report, or the KRC, the Cargill Review Committee, and there are many other reports, Amara report, and Dr. Atre report, and
the Nareshchandra Committee also.
Nareshchandra Committee, of course, definitely. And what we saw was that each of these committees was looking at the two different things. One of the committees ordered by the Ministry of Defence, which were looking at one particular aspect of it. Second of the committees which were ordered in-house by the Army, by the three services, and which did not have the MOD sanction, so they had to go back to the sanction. Now, we had certain underlying principles.
Okay.
The underlying principles are, one, that we need to make sure that we transform the Indian military from a force to a military power. Okay. Now, we are a military force. Everything is good. But we need to become a military power for tomorrow. Now, how do we do that within the existing budget or an incremental budget, as we say? So, we need to, look at the future challenges. We have to look at, the overall full spectrum challenges which our country faces, both in our western border and northern borders, internal security situations. So, we did not try to, get into the operational bit at all.
Okay.
So, operational readiness and operational preparedness. Now, operational readiness would be the preserve of the three services, and operational preparedness would be the preserve of the joint and integrated staff.
Okay.
So we cannot, we have to have a transition management also in place.
Okay.
So this committee was different in that, and we also wanted to align authority and accountability. Today, the authority lies somewhere else, and the accountability lies somewhere else. So there's no alignment between the authority and accountability. Let's layered, what you're talking about. Everyone has got a layered sort of a financial power. But when it comes to the actual thing like modernization, in the last 2 decades, it's only been 2 years when the capital budget has been fully expended. 18 years, it's not been fully expended. So what has happened is the modernization has been hampered.
Okay.
We have not kept pace with the modernization we wanted. Similarly, there are organizations which are mammoth organizations. So we should go for government-owned, corporate, operated sort of a model.
Okay, the optimization of non-combat support organizations. Let me bring in Admiral Sinha here on the integrated part, which you're saying that you've been there for 3 years. As General Bhatia is pointing out, that operational preparedness is something which should be the preserve of the integrated command staff center. Is that something which is very it seems to be a very utopian idea to look at that yes, all 3 armed forces should be involved, all 3 wings should be involved, but then up to what level is going to be the involvement of all 3 of them, because their requirements and their presence and their responsibilities all are different.
This issue has been examined by various committees, and also by the Chiefs of Staff Committee at a number of occasions. And we identified that there are 3-4 areas where the jointness must start, because nothing will change overnight. So you have to do it gradually. So how do you start? So we selected cyber, space, special forces, and the command and the 2 commands which are already existing. So 3 more. So that makes it total of 5 commands. So if we have a model where these 5 commands are under one joint command, and we said that it should be directly under the Chief of Defence Staff.
Okay.
As you go along and give him the budget, let him project to the government the entire, like General Bhatia was saying, that he should have an overall perspective of the country. So he has overall perspective of the country and he projects it to the CCS, and CCS says this is the money that we have, and then the prioritization of how much to go to the Army, Air Force and the Navy, that should probably be, quantification should be left to the CDS, who will then be talking to the 3 chiefs. He would have spoken to 3 chiefs and then have a little budget allocation accordingly. So I think that that is the way to start.
Okay, on the issue of CDS, let me bring in Mr. Cowshish here. Again, not a new point. This has been recommended by the GOM, it's been recommended by the other committees as well. But the governments in the past have refrained from taking a decision on this aspect. One, why do you believe that has happened? And once again, this has been one of the top recommendations of Shekatkar committee also. So if this is so important, should it not be done right away?
See, I am afraid I am not in a position to comment why the government has not done it. Because, but the only thing is, and I go back to what I said earlier, I don't know whether we can discuss it here given the time constraint, but some of the reasons why this has not been done in the past are fairly well known, even if these are not documented. So, as I said earlier, I only hope that the committee has actually addressed those issues and tried to allay the fears of those who have some fears. So, that's more important. Actually, the point is that more has been written about the fact that there is no CDS than on how this is going to play out.
Okay.
And that is more important.
Why there should be a CDS?
Why, not only that, and how it is going to play out in the system.
Okay.
I mean, if you have to sensitize or neutralize the opinion which is against it, then there has to be greater clarity about, why you want it, how it is going to play out, and, why it doesn't really cause any danger to anybody.
Okay, let me bring in General Bhatia again, and on a different aspect out here. You've spoken about, even Mr. Cowshish has spoken about one important recommendation of the committee of optimizing the non-combat support arms. How do you believe this particular, recommendation, if accepted by the government, is going to benefit, apart from the fact that it might save some money, it might shed some extra flap? But then these organizations have a age-old history, and then the system as well has been working. Would it not be difficult to go ahead and do that in the present system?
See, everything you want to change, you want to reform will be difficult. So that is factored into it. Today the requirements are different.
Okay.
We are a risen, responsible nation. We have a civil infrastructure which can support the services. We have the whole of union approach. I can't have everything integral and then say, okay, now I'm ready for war. So we have we have recommended closure of military farms. It's not required anymore. We have recommended closure of butcheries. We recommended closure of certain other suboptimal organizations. There's so many of them, and reforms in other organizations to meet
shifting the NCC under the Human Resource Development Ministry.
Correct, and NCC not only that, because NCC was being hampered. You see, NCC is an excellent organization. Because today the NCC is about 14 to 15 lakhs. We have said it should be about 25 lakhs in the next 3 to 4 years.
Okay.
And the resources required for that. So how do you get the resource for that? The defense budget is limited. So let the HRD ministry support that, and let them re-employ the ex-servicemen to impart NCC training to the schools and college cadets.
Okay.
So it is not that we wanted NCC to go. NCC is excellent for nation building. So it is not only that we said NCC should not be there. We said NCC should grow in the next 5 years to 25 lakhs, and then keep growing thereafter, because we need more and more of our youth to be indoctrinated.
And what about other organizations like DRDO, the OFB? Your report even talks about performance audit for them, optimization again of funds and results which you get from them.
You're absolutely right. Let's take one by one. DRDO. Excellent organization. They got some cutting edge things done. But look at the low to medium technology. 80% of the requirement of the armed forces is low to medium technology.
Okay.
Now we don't even have honestly an assault rifle which we can call our own. The INSAS is a piece of metal, if you ask me. We need bulletproof jackets. We don't get that. These are only small things I'm talking about. Soldiers' head-to-heel needs are not met. So cutting-edge technologies are very good, and they have a lot of visibility, a lot of optics. So you work on it. But low to medium technologies is a must. So DRDO needs to meet the requirements of the services. 60 to 70% of equipment is imported. We cannot look, military hardware can't be imported.
Okay, everything is interconnected. Let me bring in Admiral Sinha on this. Admiral Sinha, these two aspects, shifting NCC to the Human Resource Development Ministry, optimizing other non-combat support arms like DRDO and OFP, conducting a performance audit on them. This looks like, again, a very utopian sort of idea, but is this implementable, one, two, and will it help actually?
As far as the DRDO is concerned, there was a Ramarao committee which submitted a fairly comprehensive report. If it was accepted in toto, I'm sure what we are readdressing in this present committee, a lot of it would have been addressed.
Okay.
Unfortunately, selective employment of the recommendations has led to leaving DRDO half done and half not done.
Half not done.
So that is one. So it will be. For example, as General Bhatia also mentioned, 20% of high-end technology, yes, they are very cutting-edge technology, particularly in the naval field. As far as the underwater sound is concerned, the sonars are concerned, the torpedo is concerned, and some of the radars. So they have done, and the electronic support measure. But by and large, the 20-30% is not the whole DRDO's job.
Okay.
We should go into some model as the Dr. Ramarao committee sort of projected.
Okay.
That is one.
Okay.
Secondly, you talked about these, the flab. There is a lot of flab, and I think cutting it down, at least it will address the wasteful expenditure, and defense MOD not loaded with the budgeting provisions from the army to these organizations.
Okay, there is a lot of flab. It remains to be seen whether or not it has to be done. Let me bring in Mr. Cowshish for a final comment on this. These aspects definitely seem really, really important, and it seems everything is interconnected. You cut the excess flab, you save money, you use that particular money in some other form, in acquisition, you enhance the effective utilization of money as well as the manpower. So all this seems to be interconnected, but as Admiral Sinha pointed out, we should have done it a little earlier. Is it a bit late in the day?
No, we have to see why we couldn't do it earlier. So the point is that, while as an idea, it's very exciting that, and I fully support it. It's not as if I am against it. Actually, every organization should be subjected to some kind of performance audit, including workshops and, depots and so on and so forth. There's no question about it. The problem is that, first of all, there are 2-3 things. One, that you can't really overnight close down everything. Closure of military farms was recommended several years back, and so it's nothing new. But still, it's not been possible. And closing down military farms is not such a huge problem. It is a problem, but not such a huge problem. Imagine 5 factories in Kanpur being closed down tomorrow. I mean, there are 5 ordnance factories. You can't close them down. So there is a problem. Secondly, if I remember correctly, the committee has recommended, talked about 2 organizations, Defense Accounts Department and Defense Estate Organization. The total budget of these 2 organizations is about 2,000 crores and another 25-30 crores on account of capital expenditure. Now, let's see whether we can actually close them down.
Okay.
Secondly, even if you were to close them down, somebody will have to perform those functions. Unless you say that these functions are redundant and you can do away with these functions, which I don't think is possible. So the saving that you get from, I don't know whether it will actually save money if you were to close them down and assign the function to somebody else. It's a blind date.
Okay.
So it's difficult to say. Although as an idea, it's good.
It looks very, 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 very beautiful and very genuine. Before we close the show, let me put across a very direct and a slightly different question to General Bhatia. You've been a member of the committee. Committee has made several recommendations. We've discussed some of them. How hopeful are you that the government is going to implement a majority of them? Because your report also says that the effect will be seen only if the report is implemented in its entirety.
I'm very hopeful. You see, this is top driven now. Earlier on, there were committees, then the committees were, there were subcommittees, and the committees were discussed and debated and deliberated upon. But the decision, when it came to decision time, they were lacking. I'm not saying those committees were not professional. They were they had articulated things very, very well. I hope we had implemented them. There's a time for change. And this change is being driven by the top. Like I said in my initial this thing, that the Prime Minister himself has now told, he's challenged the senior military commanders to change their beliefs, to change their, the ways we function. And it is there. We whether we like it or not, the change has to be there now. The time for everything has come. The time for the change has come.
Okay, time for change has come. So the time has come for the government to go ahead and take those steps which will ensure that the extra flab is shed, some effective utilization of the resources is done in the army, and as our panelists were pointing out, that it seems this time around it is driven from the top. Let's wait and watch as to how and when it will be done. We'll come back again with a different topic and different set of guests. Till then, keep watching Rajya Sabha Television.